This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 89. I'm your host, Josh Matson, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And what's up, everybody? It's Monday morning, and I'm back with another edition of the podcast, and couldn't be more excited. I'm going to hop right into it with the newsroom and notes to get that out of the way. We've got new items in the shop, mostly lifestyle stuff. One of my favorite Freedom Eagle Telemark shirts. We've done that in a new color. Also on these new shirts that we're using, we've really updated the quality, and we cannot wait for you to get them and rep them in your local Telemark community. We've also got an American Freeheeler t-shirt. We've reprinted those, and that's one of my favorites. So check those out on freeheellife.com. Wanted to give you guys a little Protector 95 and 105, our Freeheel Life skis that we are making here in Salt Lake City ourselves. We're going to be moving to press our first batch. So we've worked through all the components, getting all the materials together, built all the cores, and we've got the top sheets, and we're starting to separate them out, and we're going to be putting them in that press and start moving into the next phase of that. So we're really, really excited about that. We will be releasing batches of 5 skis at a time moving forward, just so we can keep up with the demand. And also we'll be pressing some that will be in the Freeheel Life shop when we open in October, and we'll have them in-house. So we're going to make them as we go, and couldn't be more excited to share those with you this season. If you want to get on the list for the Protector skis, please email us at customerservice@freeheellife.com, and we'll have someone get in touch with you. We're starting to staff up a little bit at a time as we're starting to head into the winter, and we'll definitely have someone reach out to you and can kind of walk you through the process, more about the skis, and see if it's a good fit for you. So we'd love to share those with you. So today, I've got an amazing guest. I can't wait to share this conversation with you. I had a really good time talking to him and finding out what he's up to, and we go into some good Telemark history and also some really cool projects that he's been involved with in the past and what he's up to now. Together with his partner Kate, he is the executive co-director of the North London Mill Preservation, or NoLo as it's known, an innovative nonprofit combining historic preservation with backcountry recreation and education. Since they were founded in February of 2017, they've raised nearly $1 million to rehabilitate the historic North London Mill site near Alma in Park County, Colorado. Prior to this, for 6 years, he was the Snowsports School Director at Plattekill Mountain in New York's Catskill Mountains, where he started the annual Telefest. And they will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of that festival this year. He's an avid freeheeler, both on and off the resort, PSIA Level 3 Telemark instructor, and he currently instructs at Breckenridge Ski Resort in Summit County, Colorado. And on top of that, he also builds custom open back banjos. So please welcome to the podcast, Jeff Crane. All right, Jeff, welcome to the Freeheel Life Podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. We were just talking a couple seconds ago before we hopped on that we were trying to remember if we'd even talked in person. So nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, I think maybe we chatted years ago when we were starting the Telefest at Plattekill, but I can't remember if that was like voice or email or what. But anyway, yeah, it's good to talk to you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And so where are you at right now? Where are we talking to you from?
So I'm in Fairplay, Colorado right now, parked at this little parking lot that overlooks the South Platte and theoretically the Mosquito Range, but it's almost completely obliterated by smoke today from fires to the west of us. We've been really lucky in Colorado this summer. It's been really, really rainy, and which has been great for no fire and also for mushrooms, which we've been picking. And
oh, nice.
Yeah.
I like that. No, yeah, Salt Lake's the same way, man. It's like socked in. I can't believe how bad these fires are and how far away they are. How far away. You can't even see the mountains right now, you know?
Well, I go back and forth to New York State and here because life is complicated. And I have an 11-year-old son with a previous wife and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we were here, but in New York, the pictures I was seeing of the crazy, hazy, smoky situation and what the sun looked like, this was like last month or so. But it was like okay here. So, yeah, it's crazy the way the smoke gets carried across the country.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that area you're in, too, that's for those people that haven't been there, it's a cool, almost kind of rolling high plains surrounded by 14,000-foot peaks on the far side.
Yeah, it's a really trippy. I grew up in Denver, and we used to go up to Conifer and stuff around there and to fish, but like I never really went to Fairplay, and when we accessed the mountains, it was always via I-70, and like when I was a little kid, we went to like Geneva Basin, and that was sort of in that zone, but I'd never really been here. And then in 2016 ended up coming up here, and when you come over Kenosha Pass into what they call South Park, which is where South Park comes from, which is those high plains that you're talking about, it's pretty mind-blowing. And yeah, the peaks are a lot of 14ers and 13ers, and
yeah, no, it's cool. And there's buffalo roaming in a couple spots. not wild herds, but no, it's cool. It's kind of that's a unique part of Colorado. And same thing, I grew up in Denver, but yeah, I-70 was kind of the portal. I don't ever remember, unless you grew up in Colorado Springs, I don't think I think I rock climbed in the South Platte area once, when I was younger, but that's a really cool part, and I can't believe how much it's grown. Like I was telling you, I was there a few weeks ago, and man, that highway going through Fairplay over to Hoosier Pass and Breckenridge, and there's a lot of traffic these days, man.
Yeah, so I work at Breckenridge as an instructor, and we're not supposed to say crowded. We're supposed to say popular.
Oh,
so now my wife and I say that that it's very popular.
Oh, it's very popular. Very nice.
Yes, 285.
The lift lines are very popular.
Popular. Yeah.
I like that's a nice.
What we can't figure out is when it's like not crowded, do you say, it's really unpopular today? Like that doesn't sound good. So I don't know
That's so funny.
I didn't know you grew up in Denver.
Yeah, man. I moved around a lot as a kid, but I lived in Littleton, in the part that's now Centennial. So, but yeah, my mom went to Arapahoe High School, and yeah, I've got lots of actually most of my family on that side's still there in Parker, and I've got an uncle that's down in he's an ER doctor in Puebla, so he's kind of in that zone. He used to live in Rye, if you know where that is.
I don't.
Yeah, there's some cool little towns there, but that's kind of when I first heard about Monarch, actually, because when he first moved out there, he's like, you got to go ski this Monarch Pass, and I'm like, I'm like, where's that? And he's like, it's awesome. There's no one there. So
I remember the ads when I was a kid and like the butterfly logo and stuff, but I never really knew where it was. And Kate and I went there last season for the first time, and it was a powder day, and we had so much fun. It was so great. Yeah,
that's that's another cool one. That's kind of high mountain pass. There's a couple of those, man. That are less. They're more unpopular. I'm gonna start saying that, man. That's
pleasantly unpopular.
Pleasantly unpopular. I like that. That's gonna be my new.
Delightfully unpopular.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and then we did a road trip to we took my son a few weeks ago to Mesa Verde, and went through Durango and stayed there, and drove over Wolf Creek Pass, where I've never skied, and it's that kind of place too. But I think the problem there that I've heard, like friends who've gone, is like when they get deep days, it's just not steep enough for the powder. And it's a pretty small area, but it looks awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think the elevation, you don't have the pitch. I've talked to a bunch of people like that, where you've got these The smaller areas are killer because they're not as dense with people. But yeah, if you get like 2 feet of snow, it's not
Right.
you got flats between stuff. You're walking a lot, so it's
Well, it's good to have free heels in that case.
totally yeah. Not a good day to be a snowboarder. So no, that's funny. So you grew. That's cool. I didn't even know. I didn't know you grew up in Colorado. But
Yeah.
So did you grew up? What part of Denver did you grow up in?
We lived in southeast Denver, Monaco and Hamden. Went to Southmore Park Elementary till 6th grade. And then I went to Colorado Academy from then. And but yeah, in my family, my mom's side was in Colorado since like 1907 or 1909 or something.
Oh, wow.
My great grandmother, I think, was one of the first patients of Dr. Spivak, and that became National Jewish Hospital.
Huh.
And the reason National Jewish Hospital is in Denver is because all that immigration in the early 20th century and people were getting tuberculosis, so they were sending everybody to the mountains.
Oh, no way.
They're like, go to the mountains, like that was the cure. Like,
sweet.
It's like Switzerland. You just go there. You'll get better.
Sweet prescription. I like that.
Yeah, magic. But I guess it helps. I don't know. But anyway, that's why that happened. And a lot of Jews from the East Coast went, west. And so, yeah, my mom's on her mother's side came then, and then on her father's side was like a little bit later. So yeah, have kind of deep roots in Colorado.
That's awesome. Were you skiing when you were a younger kid? Because it's funny how many people I've talked to on the podcast. Like we all lived on the Front Range somewhere, and I mean, I know when I lived in Denver, I had cross country skis and a sled, but I never. It's not as accessible to go skiing for a lot of people that live there,
right.
So yeah, like what was growing up like? Like, did you get into skiing back as a kid, or was it later on?
Yeah, some of my first memories are of skiing, and my dad was a skier, and that was kind of our big connection. He's still alive, but that's it. In a way, it still is our big connection. And like he didn't really know how to identify with me, I think, because I was sort of artsy and stuff, and he wasn't. But skiing was the thing we shared, and so I remember like waiting in line for the gondola at Vail. I have this really like strong memory of standing under the heat lamp there, and then getting in this little 4-seater gondola with these like other dudes, like who are these guys? And you're like really cramped in there, and like it seemed really high up, when you're a little kid, and it was awesome. And that couldn't have been too long after Vail opened. But yeah, I grew up skiing, and I remember having this conversation. I think I was in like 2nd grade. I think it was Carson Elementary School. And I wrote about this, which is why I remember it. But I was talking with this other kid who was in my class. I thought everybody skied. Like, I thought that's just, you know what I mean? Like when you grow up doing a thing, you just think everybody does that. And I was talking to this kid, and he was like, I don't ski. I was like, really? Who doesn't ski? I thought everybody skied. And, yeah, so I did grow up skiing. But it's weird because I grew up skiing, and then I never was into racing or anything like that. I like to ski. And, but then when I went to college, which was in Bennington, Vermont, which is also a great place to go skiing, but coming from Colorado, and I'm not going to go skiing in Vermont, like whatever. And also I didn't have money to do it. Friends weren't doing it, whatever. I kind of stopped skiing at 18 until I was about 40 or so when I started again.
Oh, wow. That's a huge gap.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, so, cause I went to college, and then I lived in Prague for a few years, and then I lived in New York City, and I just wasn't in a group of people who were skiing. And then I moved to the Hudson Valley in New York, and I was like, wow, Hunter Mountain's like 40 minutes from my house. I should just go there. And so I did, and it was fucking awful. Like, it was really, really cold. really cold. It was sunny, but it was like really cold. It was a weekday. I got like a half price weekday pass or whatever, and rented some gear. And I went by myself. It was super cold, and then like the snow guns were on, and they were like aimed at the chair. And I had never actually even seen snow guns because when I grew up, like we didn't have them, or
it snowed enough during the season.
It snowed enough, yeah. Or they did it early in the season. You just didn't. It wasn't like happening while you were there or whatever. So like getting pelted with like grapple basically, and just like, wow, this is terrible. I'm paying for this. And then like I was thinking like, wow, the trails are kind of like the trail that you use to get to the trail in the West. Is what I thought. All right, but I love Hunter now. That was like the experience then. And then I kind of like, okay, this is East Coast skiing. You have to change your expectations and, and just enjoy what you have. And I've learned to do that. But that first day was just like, whoa,
Yeah, that's a interesting reintroduction. Like you've got this memory of Vail and skiing in the West and the Rockies, and then you skip 20 years and all of a sudden you're getting blasted with a snow gun, which is never pleasant. So
right. And then you learn to love that, it's like, yes.
Well, at least you didn't
blast me more.
At least you didn't have to 20 years is probably enough to forget that you didn't learn with edges in the Rockies on pack powder or nice groomers.
Right. There's that too. Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, it's just icy. That's how it's supposed to be.
Right. Well, I mean, the other deal was like, I went into a ski shop, and after, however many years, 20 years almost, or whatever it was. And I was like, what the fuck happened to skis, man?
Oh yeah.
Like, the boots look the same, but what's up with the skis now? Cause I hadn't been involved with it. And then I had to like relearn how to, like I still have a hard time keeping my skis far enough apart with, stance wide enough. And Tele, it's not as much of a thing, but like I have to alpine for teaching for Vail Resorts. I never did at Plattekill, and then I was a ski school director there, so I was just like, well, the director says you can teach alpine on Tele. I'm the director, and so you can't.
I like it. We got to get it on the inside to make it happen.
Well, that's it. That's the only way to make change is you got to infiltrate.
Yeah.
And then like almost half of the staff, either Tele or were always on Tele, or whatever. And that was always, I mean, we know, like people who don't Tele don't understand, like, yes, of course you can do that. And like a higher level lesson in powder, like, okay, there's stuff you can't demonstrate or can't really, like, it's not like if you have free heels and you're skiing deep powder alpine, it's not the best thing. As far as teaching, and it's not the best thing for you either, but you can do it. And almost all of the lessons at Plattekill were, just sort of beginner lessons. So you could totally do that. And it was actually good because you could get around the learning center more easily. I always thought like, wow, we should just be putting little kids on, these skis, all ties they're called.
Yeah. Like with that bind
skins.
Yeah. That kind of have that kid style boot binding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, I got some for my son, and I had these old Rotafella cable bindings, like 412s or something like that I put on him, and he loves them. And I was just like, wow, that would be the perfect ski to teach kids how to ski, because you wouldn't need a magic carpet. You could just
have them
around.
Walk up.
They're not going to go very fast, because the skin's going to slow them down, and they're going to learn balance and,
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, that totally makes sense. Well, hey, real quick, before we get into the Tele stuff, I'm curious. So you lived in the Hudson, so you lived closer to the city at that point. That's correct, right? Hudson River?
Well, so it's like 75 miles north of the city is New Paltz, and that's the exit, or Kingston.
In New Paltz. Okay. Yeah. Okay, got it. So what and what did you do in school then? Or did you go the art route then? Is that how you ended up in New York City and Prague?
I went to Bennington. Yeah, I went to Bennington College, which is this tiny little college in southeastern Vermont, and studied painting and sculpture.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and some
awesome.
other stuff, but mostly was in a band. Like that was kind of like what most of my energy went into was our band, the Love Thugs.
Love Thugs.
The Love Thugs.
I love it. That's awesome. What kind of music were you guys playing?
We could have been Nirvana.
What?
We should have been Nirvana, but we weren't.
So you were. Is this like
because Kurt Cobain was not in our band, basically? But,
what were you playing at the time?
But it was a post-punk kind of. We had like Jed and Glenn, who were like Jed Marshall and Glenn Quinnett, who were kind of the lead guys. Wrote a bunch of songs, and it was sort of post-punk, like grungy. Something between punk and metal kind of thing. And we did a bunch of covers, and, we did fun, like we covered Feel Like Making Love, but did it as a real kind of like hair, like accentuated that aspect of it.
What were you guys listening to? Like Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Husker Du was kind of our big.
Yeah, man. Husker Du is awesome. I love that.
Replacements. But Kiss also. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's a sweet little mix. I mean, so this has got to be like late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, it was, I graduated college in 89. Is that right? No, 85. Yeah, 89. 85 was high school. So yeah, late 80s, exactly.
Oh, that's super cool. There's a lot of good music. I mean, yeah, you've got a lot of the cool bands, and that's an interesting time for music too, because you're kind of, like you said, it's kind of post-punk, but it's like everything kind of got jumbled into this like alternative category, and it's
right.
Like I listened to alternative music, but it was like this broad range, like you said, like Husker Du, to Sonic Youth is like a huge span. Nirvana is obviously kind of, that's what was weird about the grunge moniker though. It kind of like lumped all the, like Soundgarden does not sound like Nirvana. Melvins doesn't sound like, other bands from the Seattle, from that Northwest area, but that's cool. You guys, if you're in that, so you're playing in Vermont, were you guys gigging up in New York at all, or?
No, we only ever played at school, and like we were like the classic bad combination of personalities, which could have worked or could have been functionally dysfunctional, but it was like so dysfunctional that like there was just no hope of us remaining a band.
like every band.
Like the drummer who just like, where's Jim? Like, fuck, but like awesome drummer, like one of the most talented kids I've ever known. And like, one, like the lead guitarist is like super reclusive and perfectionist. And, I'm just like, fuck it. Come on, let's play, you guys, or whatever. And, so yeah. And I think Glenn and Jed continued playing music after school, and they lived together for a while, and Jim went his own way, and he's in a band now. And I still play music, but I don't play rock and roll, although we're playing some cover stuff. But I played the banjo and the fiddle, and I got into like playing old time music, and most people don't know what that means, but it's like, it's the music that bluegrass comes from, right? So it's like,
it's not Old Crow Medicine Show, people. No.
Right. Well, but that's related, right?
No, I know. I'm just teasing.
But like the festivals where people play this music, there's a stage, but nobody's performing on it. The only reason there's a stage is for the fiddle contest and the banjo contest. And
right.
It has like deep roots in the South and places like Mount Airy, North Carolina. And the big festival is in West Virginia. It's called Clifftop. And I can't even remember the name of the town. I've been there a couple times, but anyway, everybody plays at these festivals, right? You camp, and then you play these old tunes that people learn, and you can learn them on the fly. They're all 16-bar, A part, B part kind of tunes, generally 1-4-5 progressions. Maybe there's a minor or sixth, maybe there's a seventh if it was popular in the 70s, but like, you can learn them on the fly, and it's really fun. and then like, I think a lot of the people who play this music are kind of socially awkward people, but this is their way of engaging with people socially. I don't think I'm offending anybody by saying that. I think we all know that.
They're probably all like, nodding out there like, yep, that's right.
Yep, that's me, you know. But just like, it's the coolest thing. You would never know this thing existed unless you did. It's like telemark skiing. You would never know that there's a thing called freeheel skiing. And then you're like, what's that guy doing? That seems cool. Or gal. And so anyway, it's sort of this it's not really counterculture, it's a subculture maybe, but old time music. So I started playing that about 10 years, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. Almost accidentally. And then, and then Kate, my wife, and I, we play together. We're playing tonight, actually, at the South Park Saloon.
Oh, yeah, that one right in Alma, right on the main street. I've been there. Nice little spot.
It's great. It's like the perfect saloon. It's like the perfect, not ski town, but like not, you know, it's great.
Yeah, no, that's a cool, that's awesome. I'm glad you're gigging, man. That's cool. Okay, that's awesome. See that I love hearing that, man. That's so cool, and I like it, and I like how you kind of related it to Telemark. Now I'm curious. So from New York, when I first encountered you was at Plattekill, which is not New York City. That's more, and I should have re-looked this up. Is that Finger Lakes zone or is
no? It's Catskill. So there's 4 ski areas in the Catskills, right? So there's Hunter, Wyndham, Bel Air, and Plattekill, and everybody knows the first 3. And you know, Plattekill is delightfully unpopular, and
that's awesome.
I hope Laszlo would laugh but he understands that's the owner. But yeah, no, it's great, and it's, you know, it's one of those best kept secret kind of places, and a lot of people call it the Mad River Glen of the Catskills, and you know, compare it to Magic Mountain, which I actually haven't been to in Vermont, and then I guess Mount Bohemia in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. A lot of people say it's sort of like that, but it's a lot like Monarch. You know, like Monarch's bigger. When I first went there, it was like, holy shit, this is like Loveland. This is awesome, you know, like my memories of Loveland growing up. And it's a ski area. There's no development. You know, you wouldn't, like, the sign for it is kind of like, really? Is that like
hand painted from the 50s or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've upgraded since, but when I first went there, and then you go through this like farm, and then you go through like a junkyard, and then you're like, really? There's going to be a ski area? And then you approach and you're like, holy shit. And it's steep. Like there's steeps that are like, you know, maybe 30s something at the head wall, and just a classic like ski bowl, you know, terrain, and super fun. And I think people not everybody knows that it has snowmaking, because it didn't as much in the past, but like the owners really work to like make that work and better, and every year improves that. And so yeah, it's a super fun place. It's a kind of place where you feel like, you know, you belong there. It's family, you know, whatever, you know.
How did you, so were you, I mean, did you move up into that area from New York City, or were you just?
Yeah, so I lived in the city so when I left Prague in what year was it? 92 or something like that. Oh, there's a bald eagle. Hello, bald eagle. When I left Prague, I moved to New York City, and I went to grad school there and got an MFA in painting from Hunter College, and did the art world thing a little bit there, not very successfully, and was mostly unhappy. And then I started teaching art at the State University of New York in New Paltz, and so I was commuting up there to teach, kind of the reverse commute, and that was nice. You'd get up at dawn and drive up the Hudson, and you know, nobody else was doing that. And so I did that for a little while, and then this was my first marriage was breaking up, and so I moved up to the New Paltz area, and taught at SUNY New Paltz for like 12 years as an adjunct, which, you know, was great for a while, and then got ungreat. But and then started skiing, you know, sort of halfway through that kind of story. So yeah,
that's cool.
started skiing again, I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's like your ski bum adventure started much later in life,
right?
Which is that's kind of unique. I like that. It's
there's a funny story with that. I went to my 20th high school reunion, and in Golden, Colorado, and I actually didn't go to the official event, but I went to this party afterwards, and it was a small class because it was a little private school, so there were like 50 of us in the graduating class. So I went to this party, and there were like 20 of us or whatever. And, everybody's like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? And, oh, State Department. Oh, wow, that's cool. Oh, I'm teaching whatever. Great. And then I talked to my friend Chris Carson, who's pretty famous here. I don't know if you know him, but the Team Summit, he's like the dude. Like if anybody's talking about Team Summit, you're like, oh, do you know Chris? Oh, yeah, Chris is awesome. And so I was like, hey, Chris, what are you doing? He's like, I'm a ski bum. I was like, oh, shit, you win, man. And
I like how the 20th reunion's like this time for all of us to reflect on who did what.
Yeah.
The people that went the corporate route are like looking at the ski bum guy, and they're like,
yeah.
you're like, the ski bum guy's like, I don't have any money, but I'm having a good time. And the corporate guy's like, I went this route and I have a ton of money, but I really want to just go live in a van.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny how that happens.
So that was actually, that was a really pivotal moment, and I was playing hockey, like men's league hockey at the time, and skiing a little bit. But then skiing started to take over, and basically like what happened was, I was doing a lot of cross country skiing in the Hudson Valley because there's great cross country ski trails and stuff. And like Denver, we didn't have that, right? Like there was not really, like you could go ski on a golf course in the morning when it snowed, but by the afternoon it was sunny and 70 degrees and done. And then, the mountains were kind of like, it was like not a lot of cross country skiing. It felt like, for me anyway. So, and my dad wasn't doing that. So there was great cross country skiing in kind of New Paltz, Hudson Valley area. And we had a few years of just really, really stellar seasons of that. But then I was like, I want to make turns. You can do that on this gear somehow, right? Like I remember those old hippie dudes when I was a kid, like what's that guy doing? And, I wanted to learn to Tele. And so I started trying to learn to Tele on like NNNBC bindings with like 210, metal edged Fisher, whatever that I got on Sierra, clearance. And like, all right, this is hard. And I took it out to Bel Air one day, and I'm like, riding the lift. I get to the top, and I'm trying to get down this easy, thing, and it's hard. And this guy, Ferd Lamotte, who used to be an instructor at Bel Air, and now he's at Magic, I think, and he was the ski school director there for a short time. But he was like, dude, you got to learn on the new gear. And I was like, well, where do you get it? He's like, what size do you have? And I told him, he's like, I've got it. So I booked a private lesson with him. He gave me some gear. We spent, it was like an hour lesson. He gave me 2 hours, and then he bought me a beer at lunch. He's like, come ski with me. And like, we have all these instructors coming from other mountains who are going to be on Tele this afternoon. And that was it. That was like life-changing, blew my mind kind of like, day. And,
so you started on, so you actually took NNN equipment to the resort, and that's when
I did, yeah.
That's amazing. That's even,
yeah. And Biff Russell was there that day, or one of those days, and I remember getting off the lift, and he's just looking at my gear and like shaking his head, and so yeah, because it's not easy to find gear, right? Everybody knows that, and but Ferd had it, and then Ferd donated a lot of, because he had a garage full of gear that he just accumulated over the years, and he donated that to Plattekill for our rental shop so that we could, make that happen. And so when I started teaching, and then I was an instructor for 1 year at Plattekill, my first year being an instructor, and the next year they offered me the director job. Because
right out of the gate, dude.
Well, yeah, it's a dubious honor. It's like, who are we gonna get? That's that guy. Maybe he'll do it. Like
fresh meat at the mountain.
Yeah, but it was great. Nowhere else could that happen. I was really grateful for it, and I really I had no idea what I was doing when I started. I kind of just like, I'm just not going to do much of anything and just watch what happens and see where the problems are and then fix them and just, because it's like, I don't even know, like, and the year that I started teaching there was a terrible snow year. So I only taught maybe 6 or 7 days. And anyway, so that's how I started there. But it was my goal to make it a very like Telemark, try to really promote Telemark at Plattekill, which seemed like a natural fit,
Yeah, was there and so you had started telemarketing kind of from that, and then getting introduced to this guy, you learned to Tele, then you go to Plattekill, and then you kind of start. Was there a little kind of Tele group at that mountain, like a lot of those small places, or were you kind of rolling solo at that point?
Yeah, no, I mean, there were guys, and like one of my first days at Plattekill, I met Dean McGeorge, the best skier on the mountain. There you go, Dean. You owe me.
Good plug.
And he's a good friend. He's my mechanic. He just retired, so I don't know who's gonna fix my car now. But and it's not that it's cheaper. It actually costs extra, but to be his friend and have him work on your car. But anyway, he's a really good skier, and so he's a good teacher. Like he's not like a technical guy, but he'll like ski with you, and so he was there, and he had some buddies there at the time, and and then there was definitely like a Tele posse in the Catskills, but it was sort of more oriented around Bel Air, and Hunter. Mainly because those places had good midweek deals that cheap ass Tele skiers would get into, this guy Bruce, I can't remember his last name, and his wife Nancy skied mostly Hunter. And Bruce is like the classic like old Tele dude with the long beard, who's just like flowing down the mountain, like wow, that's amazing, like in deep powder and trees, and just like wow. So there's definitely a scene in the Catskills, and Plattekill had some of those people, and so I was sort of like, this is an awesome Tele mountain. Like I could feel that already, just the vibe of it, and the people, and the terrain, and the trees, and all that. So we started doing the Telefest there. This is the 10th year. This will be the 10th year this year.
Wow, that's crazy. And so did you start that? Because that's kind of where we met. Like we were saying, is at some point, some email exchange or something, like, hey, can we get a swag bag? I'm sure it was something like that, like,
yep.
That might have been like 10 years ago, man. It was probably in the early days. Cause I remember, case in point, like I did not even know that mountain was there,
right?
Which was good. I mean, it got on the radar where, and like a lot of these New York areas, there's so many of these little ski areas that just are all over the place, and they have cool.
New York still has the most ski areas of any state in the country.
I know, and that's what I love is you've got, like you said, you've got all these unique places. Past the junkyard, the hand painted sign. The real, like you said, the distinction between a ski area versus a ski resort, and I think a lot of them have gone to the ski resort model, to try to have summer operations or whatever. But those ski areas are really special. I hope they, I kind of feel like they might have a resurgence, honestly, because I think people need, it's a little lower cost usually, and. Right. It lets people get up there and do stuff.
Well, I think they did very well last year with COVID and stuff, and they were well positioned for that. And I think the way that Plattekill diversified was to do like weddings and stuff in the summertime, which was, brilliant. And, so there's stuff you can do in and they used to do mountain biking, but they kind of got out of that, I think. I mean, I think the reason things go resort is money. And, in like real estate, like Vail, I think Vail in the early days was a real estate business that had a ski area, but I think now they're pretty much out of that. And it's, it's about the skiing, and they're not really But I think, early days it was about developing that resort,
Yeah.
before it was like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting about that model is like, is all the little fingers that reach out. I mean, they have they own Christie Sports now. They own,
Right.
I mean, man, where was I? Like Georgetown, on the way back down 70. I remember I pulled off to the Starbucks there to grab a coffee one night, and it was like free, get an Epic Pass if you work here. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty good deal. Like,
Yeah.
and I asked the employees, and they're like, oh no, we're owned by Vail. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, the Starbucks is owned by Vail. I was so blown away, because that's
it's kind of a massive force in this state. And when you land at the airport, it's visible. And I mean, I work for Vail Resorts, so, I'm not going to say anything bad, and I don't really have anything bad to say, but it is this massive economic and political force in this state,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no.
New York's a company town.
No,
I mean, Colorado's a company town.
No, and it totally makes sense. And it's just it's just a different model. But
Yeah.
But going back to the Telefest, I mean, was it hard? I wanted to kind of touch on getting that started. I always try to kind of hit on that with the podcast guests, is people that have started these things, because it's not easy.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious, like what were some of the challenges that you faced? Of course the idea, like, hey, we're going to have a festival. And then, like what went into that? I know you mentioned you kind of started getting a rental fleet locally. Mm-hmm. What all went into the rental fleet and the festival?
Right. Well, so one thing that made it possible was working for a mom and pop ski area, and you're just, hey, Pop, can we do this? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. As opposed to like, and that's what's interesting about like working for a mom and pop ski area and then the largest ski and, company in the known universe, right? So you get both perspectives. In a lot of ways, they're really the same. They're just scaled up, or scaled down versions. But getting a new thing or doing a thing like that, so that was really easy. And he was, Laszlo, the owner, was like, yeah, let's do it. Great. So I just went out and got, I called you and I called others, and I called Black Diamond. Can we get some skins to offer as a prize for a race, a skin up, ski down race? And, I knew Keegan Ailes in Kingston, New York, Tommy Keegan, who died last year. I knew him, and I was like, let's get Keegan Ailes to sponsor. Great. So just kind of put that all together. And the first year was a little awkward because like we did it on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and Laszlo opened the mountain for it. And it was great because we ended up having a powder day and like nobody was there and for one of the days. And the first year we coupled it with a PSIA event, and then we were like, okay, that's not working. So first couple years we were just like, what works, what doesn't. And then like AT steers kept showing up for the race, and who were like skimo whatever guys
show up in their like, their tight outfits and stuff.
Yeah, and they kept winning. I was like, all right, that ain't right, And so I think we stopped doing that, and then it just kind of got a life of its own, and we'd get sort of like 50 people to show up, we started doing it on Fridays. And I think we were doing $20 or $25 tickets for Tele skiers those days. And then we'd have like informal clinics that, for like $20. And we'd have Matt Charles from PSIA or John Doan would come. And I think Mark Lasek came one year from PSIA and just did these clinics. And some of them were like never evers. And some of them were like, I just want to be able to ski bumps better or whatever. And it was just super fun. And then we'd have a band, the Pine Hill Playboys would come play, and they'd get to ski that day. And it was a great bar scene on a Friday, which never happens there. So it just kind of, and then in the later years I kind of let go of it. And and then we got Eric Fay involved maybe 5 years ago, and Telemark down, so he'd come with demo gear, so that definitely brought a lot of people in, because like in the gear that I got from Ferd back in the day, we didn't have any NTN gear, right? So it's just all old 75 millimeter stuff. So Eric would come, and then that brought in a good crowd. But I kind of stopped doing anything. Like I'd make the poster. I'd get the poster. We had this great guy, David Rainberg, who made this wonderful poster for us year after year. And he's a graphic designer who does like real stuff for like Coca-Cola and Nike and things. But yeah, so, and now, like, all I have to do is say, you know, to Eric, hey, Eric, what day are we going to do it? Great. Okay, good. We'll make a poster. Done. You know, and then people show up and that's it. So, yeah, it wasn't, like, there were some struggles sometimes, but generally it was like, it would kind of flowed pretty naturally, you know?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and you got to kind of, like you said, you got to kind of bring a bunch of people together to make it happen. And, you know, having demos, rentals, like all those things are so big, you know, and gets people into it. So no, that's awesome. Well, man, we've covered, this is awesome. We've covered your musical career, your art career. You started a Telemark festival. You ran a ski school. How the hell did you end up in Colorado? Because I'm curious, what was that going back? And I kind of want to talk about your latest project and over on it's on Mosquito Pass. Is it on?
It is on Mosquito Pass. Yeah.
The North London Mill. Tell me, how did this? Because, like I said, we kind of got to know each other through the Telemark stuff, and then I think. I got an email from you years ago. I don't even know how many years ago did you kind of?
This was 2016 that email probably went to you and JT.
Yep.
And
tell us. Take us back to that and tell us about what the whole project is about.
Right. So I had started instructing at Vail like 6 years ago. So that predates this. And that was just because I was riding the lift up at Plattekill one day with one of the instructors on the staff, Tom Skidos, and he taught at Vail for years, and he would go in the spring and just work for a couple weeks. So he's telling me, I'm going in March. That's how he talks. I'm going in March to teach at Vail. I was like, oh, do they need people? He's like, they always need people in the spring. So he hooked me up. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm a ski instructor at Vail and for a couple of weeks in the spring, and I'm getting an epic pass, and that was great, you know. So I was already kind of coming back to Colorado that way. But my brother and I, who grew up in Denver, so he was getting married in 2016 in September. So in July of that year, his friend Matt had like a little bachelor thing. He has a cabin in Alma, or had. He just sold it. So we all came up to Alma for, like, you know, beer and other Colorado things. And
very well put.
You know, for a few days. And I knew some of the guys, you know, my brother Dan's friends and stuff, and I knew Matt. And so we're doing that. And I'm just like, dude, we got to go for a hike because we're just like laying around here drinking beer, and let's go for a hike. So we ended up going up Mosquito Pass, and it was a really rough road. And so we came to like, all right, we can't drive anymore. And then we keep walking and we come upon the mill site. I'm like, holy fuck, this is beautiful. And not having ever been to this part of the state, I'd never seen that. And I was like, wow, there's still a big snowfield there in July. You know, that's interesting. And I'm looking at the terrain behind the mill, and I was like, this is all really low angle, like no heavy concern really, you know, and generally except for there and there, I can see that steeper, but like, you know, and I'd done a bunch of hut trips to like 10th Mountain huts, you know, since, and I kind of had in the back of my mind this idea of like a backcountry ski area, right? So like something between a basin and a 10th Mountain hut, you know. And I saw the mill, and I was like, holy shit, that could be that, you know. And and I'm like talking to Matt, you know, our friend, about it. He's like, oh yeah, dude, that would kill, you know, let's do it. And so when I got home to New York, I was telling Kate about it, and she's like, that looks cool, you know. I showed her on the map. So I called the town of Alma and asked the town supervisor, like, who owns that? And then she called this guy, Dean Mizantoni, who's actually a musician and a geologist and was on our board for a little while. And he was working with the guy who was buying up that land, whose name is Joe Harrington. And so he told Joe. And so I get this call from this guy, Joe Harrington, I'm at the IKEA in Paramus, New Jersey, going to pick up my dad at the airport, stopping for whatever, I think a coffee. And I get this call, and he's like, I'm Joe Harrington. I own 3,000 acres, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, yeah, well, like, we were just up there, and we thought it would be this really cool alternative backcountry ski area. He said, I agree, let's do it. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. So, a couple things happened after that. My uncle died, so we had to come back to Denver for a memorial for that, my dad's brother. And so we were able to meet with Joe and talk to him about it. So we formed an LLC, and then we were kind of immediately, and we then had this town meeting in Alma, and like everybody came. There were like 100 people, and we were like, oh my God, and like our slideshow wasn't working, and we were just like, yeah, we just want to do this cool thing, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but we like got a lot of feedback from people and like what was going to be working, what wouldn't. We'd met the South Park District Ranger who told us about stuff. We met this guy, Gary Nichols, who was the Park County Director of Recreation, who told us about it and showed us the pictures of the Sastrugi, and like, it's really windy up there, you guys, and it's like, okay. And so just kind of learned about what was going to work. And mostly we're like, all right, there is no ROI on rehabilitating these historic buildings for what we're talking about, but there is historic preservation interest, right? So we're like, this is a nonprofit. And so we formed a nonprofit called North London Mill Preservation Inc., NoLo, and we formed that in February of 2017. This is after going there in July of 2016 for the first time. And I think by the end of that year, we got our first grant to do a historic structure assessment of the North London Mill, or maybe it was early in 2018. Anyway, but since then, it's just kind of like really come together. And the feeling I had visiting it the first time was like, this wants to be something, And so we've just kind of figured out what does it want to be and followed that. So in some ways, it's really just followed its own logic. But there have been a lot of impediments because nobody's ever done this before in this part of the state, in Park County. And so there was no zoning designation for it that could make it possible because it's in a mining zone, right? So like first what we had to do was get it on the historic, like it was eligible for state historic recognition as a landmark, but it was never done, or maybe for local. But anyway, we got that through, so we got it recognized as a local landmark, and then that made it eligible for History Colorado funding through the State Historical Fund. And my wife Kate is like really good at writing grants and following through and being like reliable on that stuff, and those are important things if you want people to give you money. And so we started doing that and forming those relationships, and we found an architect who does historic preservation, Jessica Reski with Formworks Design Group, and they do almost all the historic preservation in the state, I think. Like they're doing the Leadville Opera House, they did the Capitol in Denver, they did the Paris Mill that's on the next drainage over in Buckskin Gulch, or they're doing, so they're the architects for that. And so we found them, and we just ended up finding all the right people, and it just kind of, and so we've raised almost $1 million since 2017 to rehabilitate this site. And the Park County Land and Water Trust Fund has funded our creek crossing, which we built last year, and they're a big funder this year for our doing the interiors of the North London office. So the office is a 1889 building. It was built really well for a mining building. It had tongue and groove oak floors. Wow. Not a lot of oak in Colorado, so that came from the east, and plaster on lath walls. And when we did excavation, we found a lot of archaeological evidence of like, women's shoes and finer china. So this was like the wealthy investors from guess where, the Catskills, actually.
Are they really? They were actually.
Yeah. Oh. So Jay Gould, who was like one of those robber baron guys, and apparently one of the worst, like he was the most hated man in America. He was kind of like Jeff Bezos, or I know we're not supposed to talk about politics, but I think that's safe.
Yeah,
right?
that's probably safe.
But yeah, he was like one of those guys. And so like those guys, and then the North London mine was owned by this guy, Henry Jewett. And as I'm driving from where we have a place in the Catskills to Hunter Mountain, you go through the town of Jewett, and I'm with my son. Like, that has got to be the same Jewett. And of course it is. And he built railroad cars. So when we went to the Transit Museum in New York City, his name was all over everything. So Colorado was built by these guys, right? And anyway, where was I?
I don't know. That's unbelievable, though. That
yeah,
there's a connection there's a connection to the Catskills, and here you come from Plattekill, and you're over here on your buddy's suggestion to be a ski instructor, and then all of a sudden now you're like restoring a historical site and digging up the artifacts of these people from where you just came from.
Right. Yeah, no, it's nuts. So anyway, the office. So we finished the exterior last year, and we're working on the all of the mechanical, so solar and septic and well and plumbing and electric, and that's all happening this year. And and then the interior and insulation, we're going to do plaster skim coat over blue board walls, because we're not doing lath. That's ridiculous. But
you don't want to go back to the old.
Nah, certain things have gotten better, but it'll have that look and feel. And so it's really a restored historic building as a backcountry hut. It's going to have a flush toilet and running cold water. I've never been to a hut that had a flush toilet. And a lot of that was because we had to, because of permitting and stuff in Park County. But then a lot of it was Kate and I joined the Colorado Hut and Yurt Alliance. And the first meeting we go to, it's like a dozen or so hut owners and operators sitting around a table. And, the conversation ends in the toilet, right? Like literally, because that's the biggest problem with running these things. Huh. And so we're all talking about shit, at the end. And the takeaway from the first meeting was like, if you can do a well and septic, do it, because just maintenance or whatever. They're like, well, great, because we can drive there and we can do that. So, we're working on all that stuff this summer. We had hoped to have it open this year, but COVID, and it's not even COVID. It was just like people got so busy this summer, contractors and everybody, that like it's taking forever to get our septic design, and then the permitting and everything. So we're gonna have it open next year, I think, as a backcountry hut, and it'll operate pretty similarly to 10th Mountain Division huts in Colorado, and we have to rent the whole hut. We're not going to do per person, but it's smaller. It's like a 10-person occupancy. So that works. And then we have 2 other huts planned for the site that are also historic buildings. And like one of them is in perfect condition, but it's in South Park City because they took it there in the 50s. It's this little log building that was the assayer's office, but the foundation's still there. So,
how many buildings are there total?
So we're planning 3 huts, rebuilding 2 of them, which would be the assayer's office and the bunkhouse. Historic photos show lots of buildings. There were probably a dozen, maybe. But the mill is the centerpiece, and it's this 1892 timber frame with massive stone foundation gold mill. It was one of the biggest gold strikes in Colorado, and had Colorado's first aerial tramway, aka chairlift, basically. That's where they came from.
Yeah.
And that went up, I think, 800 vertical feet up to the mine, and served the mill. And so that building is getting stabilized starting this summer, we hope, with federal funding through the Colorado Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. And so, we're just pulling. It's a lifetime project, I always kind of joke, like my son, who's 11, is in training basically to take over. Not sure if he wants to do that, so that's what we've been working on since 2017, and And the terrain there is great. It's like there's plenty of low angle stuff. Everybody like wants big vert and steep, but it's like, dude, you cannot ski that shit in Colorado in the backcountry until March, maybe.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
And so
oh, go ahead.
You need low angle shit. You know?
No, that makes sense too. And you've got to be, I'm thinking, you got to be around 11, 12,000 feet where you're talking.
You got it. Yeah. So the mill's at 11,400.
Yep.
And it's a windy zone, and so the snow gets fucked up, but it's great in the spring. And I've been up there, and every month that you could ski in, and I've never not had fun. I mean, there have been a couple times where like, oh man, this is crap. But you get home and it's like, well, that was fun. And it gets wind affected, but we get powder days. We get days where it's not windy and the snow's nice, and it's great. And then the spring is really great, and it's a long spring there. So we skied a line last June that was just awesome. And so yeah, it's high up there and it's pretty exposed, but it's this historic place. And the other story about it is this guy, Father John Dyer, who wrote this book called The Snowshoe Itinerant that was published in 1890s, I think it was. It was really like the first backcountry skier in Colorado, and he wrote this book about it. And he would ski Mosquito Pass, delivering mail between Leadville and Alma on 12-foot Norwegian snowshoes, which were freeheel skis.
Yep.
And just has these amazing, harrowing stories about that. And so it has this history to the place, and back to growing up in suburban Denver, where like you kind of learn about Colorado history, but you're not really connected to it, and there's not a whole lot that's historical about your sheetrock walls and your 2x4 stick construction house that was built in the 70s. You know what I mean? So
for sure.
And then you live in the East, and it's like, oh, old stuff, and I understand. So it has this connection to history and to the history of Colorado and why people are here and how they got here. And so I really, I like that about the place.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was looking at the site, the NoLo site, before I got on with you, and I had not caught that. Dyer was his last name. Yeah, I hadn't caught that piece, and it completely. Yeah, I was like, that is so cool, because there's a similar story of, I believe it's Snowshoe Thompson in the Sierra. Yeah. And yeah, man, I can't even imagine traveling through. And for those that are listening, go to I'll make sure to have the website in the notes and look at the terrain. And I mean, you imagine these guys in the 1800s walking around in these zones. I mean, like you said, it's exposed, it's high up. There's a lot of stuff. So to carry the mail from one place to the other, also, Leadville. Oh, actually, not to sidetrack, but I just realized this. As you drive through Alma, it claims to be the highest in Colorado, but
it's the highest incorporated town. Leadville's a city.
Okay, that's the difference. Yeah. That caught me off guard, because I saw that on the sign and I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. I thought Leadville had the claim to fame on this, but yeah, you're talking, these towns are at 10,000 feet. I mean, they're up there. So
yeah, and there was more wildlife back then, and mountain lions and stuff, and just it's crazy.
Wow.
And no Gore-Tex, no NTN.
Yeah, 12-foot skis, no big deal.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow, that's so cool. What a cool project, man. And I like how you said it's kind of following its own logic. It's to go from you're up there on a bachelor party hanging out, and to just watching it kind of organically come together, and everybody coming together, towns, architects. I mean, what a cool story, man. That's really cool.
It's a lot of fun. And just to kind of circle back, like I stopped making, paintings, but like, and I started making music, but like for me, this is like an art project. And I think about Christo, and I used to show the film of his running fence, which was in Colorado, in like the Aspen zone, Roaring Brook zone. I think that's where it was. Anyway, and I think about that project, and most of that project, and it was with his wife, and she made all the phone calls and stuff, but it was just like most of that was just getting it done through town councils and stuff like that. And so I kind of think like, well, that's kind of what this is, so for me, this is sort of, this is like the artwork of, that I'm working on.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. It's cool to see that you've been able to pull that all back together. And one thing I wanted to mention that I think is cool is, like you mentioned, your music, and this makes a lot more sense, is you're making banjos now too on top of all of this stuff. Yeah. Is that a pretty recent occurrence that you're starting to make?
Yeah, I've been doing that for about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, right about the time that I was like splitting up with my son's mom. And it's kind of the perfect thing to do when you're getting divorced is go to a banjo making workshop. So that's what I did.
I love it. Like music instrument therapy. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was just brought kind of like I'd wanted to make one, and so I learned how to make one, and so I make them. I make a few a year, and this year's been really like in COVID. Probably people were like, I should learn the banjo. Make sourdough bread, learn the banjo, whatever. And so make a few of them a year, and I enjoy it. So keeps me busy in the summertime.
I'm curious because I'm not a banjo player, but there is a 4-string, and then there's a 5-string, and you can do 8 strings. Is that right on banjos?
Well,
how does that all work?
Yeah, that would be like a banjo mandolin, but yeah, 5-string banjo is the traditional American banjo, and that comes from an African instrument that's called the akonting, which is actually just 3 strings, but it has that short drone string, which is kind of part of what makes it a banjo, and then the other part is that it's a drum on a stick. So there's some arguments of like, well, if it has 5 strings like that, it's a banjo, even if it's an acoustic instrument. It's like, well, no, if it's a drum on a stick, so like a banjo ukulele or a tenor banjo. But the banjos I make are 5-string traditional open back banjos, and those are played with a technique called claw hammer, which is not 3-finger scrug style. And claw hammer is the Telemark of banjo.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it's the old way.
Yeah, because you've got, and what did you call that? There's the tuning peg that's like halfway up the fretboard, right? That's that top string.
Right. It's a drone string that's tuned to the key that you're in generally, but you can do a lot of different tunings. But like the standard banjo tuning is G, D, G, G, B, E. Is that right? So it's a G chord. But then there's other tunings. But so that 5th string. But then like banjos got resonators and got loud in the mid 20th century, early to mid, and then Earl Scruggs basically developed that 3-finger style that everybody associates with banjo playing, and that Steve Martin plays that way, and whatever. But
you said claw hammer, is that
so? Claw hammer is like you don't wear finger picks, and you play the 5th string with your thumb, and then you down pick with either your 1st or 2nd finger, and when I first got into it, I was like going to see people play banjo, and I went in Woodstock, New York, to see like Eric, he just died, who did the dueling banjos thing that became so famous and infamous. I can't think of his last name. Eric Weisberg. And of course he was complaining about like not getting royalties from that, whatever. And Pete Warnick, who's a really famous, banjo player. But then Bruce Molsky was there, and he was playing claw hammer. And I was like, what is that? That is awesome. And it was just like seeing a Telemark skier. It's like, wow, that's way cooler, And so I learned about that and old time music and all that stuff. So
that's cool. Is that so? When you think like Appalachian music, is that claw hammer, or is that kind of this other?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's fiddle driven. Like bluegrass came, Bill Monroe, and he was a mandolin player, but the banjo became more of a lead instrument, and the fiddle is kind of in the back a lot in bluegrass music and is much more virtuoso. But old time Appalachian music is, really simple music. Anybody can learn it. Really, anybody can learn it. And that's a beautiful thing. And it's really folk music. It's like the people's music. And, I could mention names of people who are, the best and famous, but nobody would know them.
Right.
Carolina Chocolate Drops came out of that scene, actually, so people do know them, and Rhiannon Giddens and stuff, and they've gone on to do other stuff. But like they used to go, I don't know if they still do, but they'd go to the old time festivals. And then if you know Donna the Buffalo, that's kind of a jam band, but the musicians in that are also really, really amazing old time musicians. And Jeb Purrier is is the guitarist, and he's just a phenomenal fiddler. And actually, I just learned that Tyler Childers, who I just got into and is pretty well known sort of new country guy, he's also an old time musician, and he's really good fiddler and banjo player.
Wow, that's so cool, man. I love that. I love hearing about these subsets, and obviously I like all the traditional stuff in Telemark, and I like the music's like that too. You can go digging pretty deep and find a lot of roots, and it's good. I'm starting to think we need to start.
The time is flying here.
No, well, we need to. I was just thinking I got to connect you with my buddy Steve Berthel. He's a pedal steel player out in the Midwest.
Oh, sweet.
Tele guy, and get some banjo. Now we just need to find some other guys.
So many Tele people. Well, Tele people are just so much more interesting than Alpine people in my experience, and a lot of them play music. Like I've met a lot, and John Doan, who's a PSIA examiner, and he's a banjo player, and I always kid him as you play three finger, dude. The clawhammer is the Telemark band. He's like, I know,
he's straying away when it comes to the music. He
plays alpine banjo.
Yeah. That's even better. Oh man, that's so funny. Oh man, well, thank you so much for coming on, and I love talking about all this stuff, and once let's definitely have you back on once the NoLo project opens up to the public. And
that'd be awesome.
It'd be cool to just kind of see how it evolves and what other kind of fun stories you can share about that, and once people actually start using it, it'll be fun to hear how people are experiencing it.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks, Josh. It was super fun talking to you for the last hour. I really enjoyed it.
No, it's been awesome, man. All right. Well, thanks for being on, and we will catch you later, brother.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
That was such an awesome conversation. I love, like I said, I bump into a lot of these people that I'm having on the podcast years and years ago, like Jeff through Telemark festivals, or someone I met on the road with doing Telemark movies. And it was really cool for me to get to know a little more about his background, his history, how he got into Telemark. I by far think that's my favorite part of the story, is that he started going to a resort on NNN gear. That's what it's all about. You just, ignorance is bliss. And I love that part of the story about him going up and doing that. And then really the community, the local guy that helped him out, bringing him into the fold and kind of showing him the ropes. And it's amazing to see what he's done since then. So, had a really good time talking to him, and really appreciate him coming on. And I love the NoLo project that he's doing, and I can't wait for that to open. Hopefully go check that out myself. And it'll be cool to see it when it's open to the public, and you can go partake in that experience up in Colorado. So before I sign off for the day, reminder, sign up for the mailing list. We want you to be on there. It's a great way to get your information from what's going on with Freeheel Life and Telemark Skier. And we like to stay in touch and let you know what new products are coming out, updates about our Protector series of skis that we're working on, new articles on Telemark Skier and the like. And especially now as we're heading into the fall, in the next couple months, there's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about all across the board. Backcountry news, resort news, things that are going on in the Telemark community. And we want to make sure that you guys are staying up to date on all of that. How you can support us and support the podcast. This whole thing is driven by you out there, the listeners, being part of our community, the Telemark community at large. And we love you for that. So, as always, we would love for you to be a Freeheel Life customer when you buy your Telemark equipment. We're going to be getting stock in, like I said, as we start getting into October. And we would love for you to make a purchase with us so that our specialized team of Telemark skiers can help you out, answer questions, and guide you through the process, whether you're a new Telemark skier that's transitioning over and want to try it, or you've been a Telemark skier your whole life, whatever it may be. We want to be able to help you out. So you can find that at freeheellife.com and check it out. Also, we've relaunched Telemark Skier Magazine on telemarkskier.com. That's where you can find great articles, gear reviews, and more. We're putting up content every week. Craig Dosty's running that and doing an amazing job of keeping people informed. And we're starting to really put together more of the gear reviews and more of the in-depth knowledge that you're looking for in terms of Telemark specific content. So thank you for supporting us, whether you're a monthly subscriber or you've signed up for the annual subscription. That's what's driving that. We don't have advertising. The only thing you see us advertise is our shop and our magazine on there. And we know that we can give you an objective point of view on what we're learning on equipment and the like. And so thank you for those that have subscribed so far. We hope you'll also become part of that family with us. If you're a Freeheel Life shopper, we'd love for you to be a Telemark skier subscriber as well. You can email me questions or ideas or feedback about the podcast at podcast@freeheellife.com. You can reach out to the Freeheel Life crew at customer service at freeheellife.com. And we appreciate all the support. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, take a second, rate and review the podcast. Let me know if you're enjoying what you're hearing, and I would love to hear your thoughts. I try to go read those, and I always get some great feedback from people that have stumbled upon it or whatnot. So take a second and do that. Share the podcast with your friends and help us get the word out about what's going on in the Telemark world. Thanks for listening, my friends. I'll see you next week on Monday, as always, with another great episode of the Freeheel Life podcast. And until then, spread Telemark always, my friends. Peace.